That looks a little bit familiar.
Everything working?
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good
Where's
day.
your hat?
What's that? My hat? Oh,
Oh, yeah.
talking about my beanie or my Thanksgiving?
Your Thanksgiving hat, your turkey hat. Your bird.
See, that's the dumb thing. It's like I'll go into, like I went into Meijer. I'm like, there's a few items I need to get, and okay, and I'm very much thinking about, like, Christmas is coming. Gotta save every penny because tight budget Christmas presents and all this. And as I'm walking in, they have this Thanksgiving display, and I see these turkey hats. I almost walked past it, and I stopped. I'm like, wait a second. So I looked at it again. I'm like,
Tried it on.
oh, I didn't even try it on. No, I'm like, well, clearly I'm getting one of these.
So
yeah.
much for the budget.
Well, and it was like, I saw it was marked as $12. I'm like, $12? This what a stupid thing to spend your money on. And then as I'm checking out and I swipe it, it was like down to $8. So I'm like, oh, hey, I'm getting a deal. So see, I'd be stupid not to buy it.
I thought you were going to use it today.
Well, yeah, actually, I thought about it. I thought, you know what, for the kids, it'd be fun. Maybe I'll just show up in their Sunday school class. But now I'm thinking about the kids that we have. I'm like, I'm going to have them assaulting me, trying to grab it off my head. I'm like, this is probably not going to end well.
No.
So I'll just let their parents on Facebook show them pictures of their and plus, if I show it to them before church, on children's message, I made it, where's your hat? Where's your hat? Where's that turkey? Yeah. My old age, I'm thinking these things out a lot more. Years ago, I would have just like, oh yeah, this will be fun, and then I'd be like, that was a mistake.
It's hard to explain that you're our pastor.
Oh,
When they see
I don't envy you at all.
I still have a picture of you with all the
Ornaments?
in your
Oh yeah.
beard.
Well, I still got. I'm pretty sure I know where they are. I have to unpack those this weekend. Oh yeah, I do dumb things. Anyway.
That turkey thing reminded me of something years ago. Pam and my daughter and I were out for a ride in the country,
Mhm.
and there's some turkeys alongside the road, so we stopped. I mean, these were domestic turkeys.
Oh, okay.
And we were in a large truck, but this turkey was tall enough to look right inside the window, and they came right up to the window.
Jeez.
And it was a male turkey, with the
Right.
beard. And my daughter looks at it, and she was only what, 4?
If that, yeah.
Look at the tongue.
Awesome.
It was fun.
Could be a long time.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy.
Hi.
I'm good. How are you?
Hey, Bob.
Oh,
It's not.
Good.
Oh, I hear the call of the mommy.
Open doors. Where's Dad?
He's
Who's
just-
Dad?
I'm gone.
Let's
Says
go to your class.
I'm not looking for dad. Did he say hi, Pastor?
Yeah, he said, hi, Pastor.
Yeah.
How are you?
It's amazing the
Very
word.
social this morning.
That's
There's no brain defect there.
not there.
At
No.
least he didn't say like turkey, man. That was good.
Not Pastor.
Not
He
yet.
didn't call you buddy. Hey, buddy.
Oh yeah.
That's what he usually says.
I wonder where that comes from.
Yep. Couldn't possibly explain it.
Every boy is a buddy. Oh, so let's see. What do we got today? So I'm preaching on the gospel today. This is in those days, all this hell is gonna break loose. Well, I guess technically hell is not gonna break loose. I guess in those days heaven will break loose. But all this chaos happens on the last day. But hey, and then don't worry, I don't even know when it's going to happen. So a lot of it is focus on when is this going to happen? Tell us when these things are going to happen. That's the disciples' focus as he's talking about all this is tell us when. And Jesus basically says, no, I can't tell you. I won't tell you. I don't know myself, which is interesting. And there's a lot you probably unpack there. So there's that. So this is the last Sunday of the church year. I never quite enjoyed the last Sundays of the church year, the last Sunday or two as it ends. Partially because it always feels like an uphill battle to like, no, our year starts now, like, before the beginning of December, this is when our year starts. And it's really pushing a rock uphill. It's because our year starts in January 1, that's when the year starts. Everything is geared towards that. It feels right where, we end the year with, Christmas. Christmas is like the highlight of the year. We're building up to it, and we start a new year kind of in the afterglow of Christmas, and it just feels right, makes sense. But then the church doesn't work that way. The church operates on a different calendar that begins a month early. It begins, well, I guess technically it doesn't begin with Christmas. It begins with Advent, which builds up to Christmas. And then we go the whole year, and then the last few weeks of the year is really Advent, well, looking ahead to the second Advent, to the last day. So I've always found it just challenging because we don't live according to the church year anymore. I mean, the way the church year kind of flows and all that was great way back in the day when everybody's lives were centered around the church and like it had a natural kind of feel to it. We don't. It's just we don't have that mode of living. So a lot of it is just kind of it feels weird to talk about the end of things in the beginning of the year in November. So that was it's not like it was a huge problem, but it always felt weird. And I think, I don't know, in my early days of ministry, I was like, we're gonna get back to like more focus on the church year and trying to change our focus on the church year. And then after a few years of that, I was like, yeah, that's not gonna work. Not that I think it's a bad thing, but I think it's just it's one of those pick your battles kind of thing, and I don't think this is the battle I want to fight anymore. The year starts now. It's like, yeah. So, but anyway, when you can kind of get away from that and not be so focused on the church year, the text for the gospel is good, and honestly, I think it works really well for post-election years. Because what was that?
We're still in.
Well, we're always. I'm not gonna mention the election in the sermon. Don't worry. But I mean, just in a practical sort of sense, I mean, we are in this lame duck season of waiting. I mean, really, and because half the country is elated and can't wait, are just like, let's just get the dude out already so we can get our Messiah in, whatever. And then the other half is weeping because their Messiah didn't work out. And they're just biding time until the end comes and the false Messiah steps up, and it's just so, we're so, blah. So everybody's in this like holding pattern and waiting and, and God knows when, the specter of January 6th and all this stuff, and like, oh God, what's going to happen? And so I think the gospel works pretty well for
Nice segue.
for working, for working some of this stuff out. Well, because like I said, half the first paragraph, half the country is probably thinking like, yes, it's coming soon where this is going to happen and it's awesome, and the other half of the country is looking at this first paragraph and say, yep, the end is near, oh God, oh, everything. So in those days after the tribulation, after the election, the sun will be darkened. The sun will be darkened.
Shine again.
The moon will not give its light. The stars will be falling from heaven. The powers in the heavens will be shaken. Clearly that's happening. And they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. And then he will send out the angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven. So, last day, okay, crazy, And then he goes, but from the fig tree, learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts out its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also when you see these things taking place, you know that he is near, at the very gates. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But concerning that day or that hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Be on guard, keep awake, for you do not know when the time will come. It's like a man going on a journey when he leaves home and puts his servants in charge, each with his work, commands the doorkeeper to stay awake. Therefore, stay awake, for you don't know when the master of the house will come, in the evening, midnight, when the cock crows, or in the morning, lest he come suddenly and find you asleep. And what I say to you, I say to all, stay awake. Yay! So, there's difficulties, obviously, here. I think clearly, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. That's problematic. Because in one way you could read some of this as kind of like the cross. You know, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, you know, kind of a sort of more, well, metaphorical, sort of like, you know, the cataclysmic shifting of things, you know, and then the battle is decisively won there. Stars falling from heaven, the powers in the heavens will be shaken. So kind of this, you know, God speaks at the cross, you know, declaring our sins forgiven, and that's like universe-shattering kind of stuff. You could read it like that. But then you will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. I mean, that's, and he'll send angels to gather his elect. That's last day. I mean, that's, you can't explain that one away. I've never heard anybody try to be like, well, maybe he's talking about, it's like, yeah, no. It's last day. So then he says, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Okay, so there's that. Let's set that aside. And then, concerning that day or the hour, no one knows, not even angels of heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father, which is problematic because, you know, Jesus will say, I and the Father are one. He is God. I mean, it's like, so... And we have ways that we can explain all this away. And depending on how you feel about that, you're going to have various levels of comfort with that. You know, with the not even the Son knows, well, then we say, well, you know how this works, and we have all these nice little diagrams that we can do, and how, you know, the communication of attributes from the Father to the Son, how the Son is not the Father is not the Son, they are one, but, you know, and so sometimes, because the Son is also fully, you know, he is fully God and fully divine, but, you know, oftentimes he empties himself out, he humbles himself, he makes himself lower than the angels for a time, so that he doesn't know is him denying himself knowledge, so he's not saying that the Son doesn't have the knowledge, but he's denying himself the fullness of that knowledge, so we can explain that one away. Like I said, you're either going to hear that and be like, oh yeah, that checks out. Or you're going to be like, wait a second. That sounds like you're making that up. Which to a degree, yeah, we are. I mean, there's no scripture that explains, okay, now, when Jesus, who is God and man, this is how he does this. And this is how he denies him. And this is how you understand his... Scripture doesn't lay that out, you know. Theologians come along, they take all of Scripture, and they, you know, from what we know of God, what we know of Jesus, you know, what Scripture gives us, and then we construct the theology that systematizes it and puts it all together. So, that the Son doesn't know, okay, you can explain that one. I'll be honest, I have not heard a satisfying explanation for, truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. I think the closest I've heard, and this is probably, you know, this might be the Concordia, you know, commentary, official, whatever explanation, is that it's something to the effect of, like, this generation is not this, like, this generation of people, just the ones here, but kind of this generation of all people, the church. This generation It's like,
Oh,
oh, okay, which is
closer.
fine. Although, usually we talk more about the church after, post-resurrection, and that's kind of, maybe he does, this is Peter, I'll build my church, okay, cool. So he's this generation is the church. So, the church will not pass away. That the church will not pass away until all these things take place. Like, okay. But even that's kind of problematic because, the church passes away, the church disappears, the church is the people of God. So what does that mean? Well, resurrection. I was like,
And he doesn't ever use that as a descriptor for the church.
yeah,
We don't talk
there's
about
that
him as a
too.
generation. Yeah.
I mean, you'd be like, well, why didn't he just say this church will never pass away? Like, well, he's tricky. He likes to hide stuff. Like,
So going back to the Hebrew, is there more than one definition for generation?
well, this would be the Greek.
The Greek.
I mean, there might be different flavors to it, but I mean, I don't know of any way that you can take what he says there and be like, this church, this communion, this community is like, no, this generation.
He didn't mean species. I mean, like the humans
No,
don't pass away.
No, that wouldn't.
Trying to figure
That would be
this out.
farther from it.
Isn't the generation from the time that Christ came until the time that he comes back?
Well, that's the explanation. That would be that generation of
Yeah,
that, which
that's the way I.
like that's the closest that we could probably come to it. Which, yeah, it's just a weird way to talk about it, and there's no other place that really refers to people like that, like the church is the generation. It's weird. It's not clear.
Well,
But
we got our
here's an
tiny
amusing
little brains,
thought.
so how are we
Yeah.
supposed to figure it out?
Well, somewhat.
We'll get there.
Somewhat to that point, I mean, you had the disciples walking with Jesus this whole time, and many, many times he said, the Son of Man's going to be lifted up and crucified, and 3 days later is going to rise again. And how much of that did they understand
Right. Yeah.
before they got to the actual event? And yet here we are sitting here going,
Oh yeah.
oh, Christ is talking about all these things that are going to occur in the future, but I don't get it. Really? You
Right.
don't get it? What a shock.
I mean, it comes down to you're not God.
Says who?
I know, right?
Oh, sorry.
When
I just leave it at that. Yeah. Okay.
When Jesus talks about the time that Connie was talking about, that period, how does he refer to it elsewhere in the New Testament?
Fullness of time. I mean, I don't know every single time if he refers to it simply as that, but I think more often than not, it's the fullness of time. When the fullness of time comes, this is when I return. This is when this is at the appointed time, at the fullness, the completion. So there is more of a sense of just the task at hand, like the fullness, the completion, the fulfillment of all things. Which, I mean, and the generation kind of works with that because, because if you're looking at part of it, you can say where he's like, well, I can see where he's referring to the cross, but he's definitely referring to the end time. So you could, and of course, Scripture always blends those two together, where it's always like we have the foretaste, the beginning of all this, the beginning of the last day is the cross, and the fulfillment of the last day is on the last day. So it all blends together.
And you're saying this is the only time this is mentioned like this?
When he refers to like this generation, that we look at it and our understanding of it would be like he's talking about this generation being people of all time. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, to their point, just really quick definition, it could mean birth, descent, progeny, race, generation. In the New Testament, it's common in the Synoptics, rare in Paul, and absent from John. It mostly means generation and is often qualified adulterous, evil, unbelieving, and corrupt. So to think of it as generation in the sense of, I mean, to their point of church, all of them are corrupt generations. It didn't just start right then when Jesus arrived. So
Yeah.
there could be a point to the broader issue, but
It could, all the, and I don't know, I don't remember reading specifically, but it seems to me that most of the commentaries that I've read about it, most people take it, like all the theologians, whatever, who write this stuff, they don't even seem to, the thrust seems to be like what they're hearing, what Jesus was like it was really this generation here, and not.
well, it doesn't have a qualifier.
It doesn't.
It
It
just
doesn't.
hard, so that's harder to.
And honestly, I think that this whole kind of, we can make sense of that to a degree. Honestly, I think making sense of it is kind of the issue, and that's what my sermon will kind of pick up on, is that don't make sense of it. And specifically, the sermon is more geared towards the timing, because we shouldn't do this, and we don't in general. Other groups do this more, where they'll look at this and say, okay, well, he doesn't give us a time, so that means we have to figure out the time. Like, we're going to look and say, when is brother fighting against brother? When is this earthquake happening? When is, the Middle East on the rise here? When is the temple being rebuilt? All these things. And they're looking at it like, okay, Jesus has given us clues. It's like the Da Vinci Code. Here's all these clues that Jesus has kind of scattered out there, and it's our job to kind of piece them together and figure it all out.
It's like he's up there saying, "Oh, this will be fun."
Well,
I
yeah.
had a job.
Yeah. So this is divine scavenger hunt. And that's not really the point. Is and to the thing where God is God, we're not. Is that and I think Jesus' kind of comment here about not even the Son knows, is to say like, look, this knowledge is not for you. And so I would even take it like, nor the Son, where it's like, okay, so does Jesus deny himself the knowledge of this? And, well, sure, okay, in that moment he's communicating that he denies himself the knowledge, okay. But I think our jump to say well, how does he deny? Why? What's going on here? He denies himself knowledge. Why would he do that? How does he do that? And it's like, getting off on the wrong track. The fact is he's saying like, look, this is not for you to know, bottom line. And I would say that even he's saying not even the Son knows is, and it is not I'm not here to tell you this. My role as a Son is not to give you knowledge that is not for you to have. That sounded. Did I use a double negative there? You get it. Words are hard. And most of this is like, okay, so, well, what do you do with this? Sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. What are you going to do?
Pray.
Well, Connie with the... It's supposed to be rhetorical. Don't give a good answer. Well, yeah, pray. But I mean, the climate change, we're having an impact on the climate, and we're seeing different patterns, and the climate is, it's all over. Okay, what are we going to do about it? Well, we have concrete steps. We think, hopefully, if we can do them, if people can agree on anything, maybe. It's like we get into this mode of like, here's how we deal with this. Here's how we deal with this. Here's how we deal with this. Well, when the sun and moon are darkened and refuse to give its light, and stars are falling from heaven, what are you going to do?
You got nowhere to go.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it. You're powerless. It's like, this is happening, and you can't do anything about it. Heavens will be shaken, the Son of Man comes down, okay, all this stuff. Well, you have no power to do anything about this. The only thing that you could possibly is like, well, okay, well, at least tell us when. And he's like, no! What does it matter when? Like, this is knowledge of God. Why do you need it? Well, so we can be ready. It's like, and I was going to use this example, but I didn't ask Heather.
You want somebody to check outside the door, make sure she's not around?
I think she
No,
is.
I think he's gonna ask her if it's all right if I say this.
You go for forgiveness, not permission.
All right, I got permission.
Oh, sure.
You gotta be careful. So, like, if you know the time, well, then you can be ready. well, what does being ready do? I mean, well, not, but what is knowing the time? Because we all have different ways of getting ready. Either so that means you're going to, like Heather's. If we say we need to leave at 10, Heather doesn't get ready until right before 10. Like she can be up for a couple hours, but she won't get ready until, because it's like, well, why? It's not until, we don't have to leave until like 9:30. If I'm up at 7, I'm just going to relax and enjoy and then get ready. Meanwhile, here I am. I'm like, no. You get up at 7. You get ready, because you never know what's going to happen. But then I'm not. So I'm ready 7, or get up at 7. I'm ready by 7:30 to leave by 9:30. I'm not then spending those 2 hours like keyed up. Let's go. I'm like, see, now I can relax. See, now it's no stress. I've done what I need to do, and now I can just chill. So either way, it's like, what are we prioritizing? We know the time that we need to go to get ready, and we're still looking at it in terms of what is going to maximize my comfort now. I'm either going to enjoy the time that I have and then get ready at the end, or I'm going to get ready real quick and then enjoy the time until the end.
You try both ways.
Both ways. Well, in our house, we do both ways.
Right
That's
way.
what I do. Some mornings I get ready right the first thing I get up.
Right.
Other times I,
Whatever works.
yeah.
So I mean that's our kind of thing. So if Jesus came and gave you the date and time, well, half the people would then be freaking out and getting all set and ready, and then like, okay, now I can relax. Or people would be like, well, shoot, I can live it up until 2 hours beforehand, and now we're ready to go. So it's like there's no benefit to us, honestly, for having the time. So what Jesus does in this is he gives you two little examples. First he says really hard stuff about like sun and moon and all this, and generations passing away, and stuff that we can't possibly understand, that we don't know, and how the sun doesn't know, and we're like, oh, what does all this mean? But then he says, hey, look, here's what you need to know. Tree. Look at the fig tree. Look at the worker. He says, okay, for you, because you're not God, don't worry about this stuff. You get to grow and bloom. You get to take care of the house. That's all he says. There's all this like really, really like, ooh, okay, freaking out. But he says, look, from the fig tree, learn the lesson. It grows, it buds, it blooms. And guess what? When summer comes, it's ready. The fig tree wasn't freaking out. The fig tree wasn't saying, I've got to grow some figs now. Oh gosh, or maybe I should grow some figs now and save something. Like, no, the fig tree just is a good fig tree. It does fig tree stuff. Fig tree. And then when the end comes, it's like, oh, okay, it's the end. The worker, the master goes, and the worker is like, oh, gotta take care of the house. All right, well, clean this up, do that. Okay, that's cool. All right, go to bed. Next day, huh? Oh, yeah, dust that. Okay, cool. They're not thinking like, the workers aren't relaxing, and when he's close, we'll get busy. And he's not like, oh, let's clean up the house real quick, get it all done so we can relax. The worker's just like, we got our chores today. Let's do our chores. We got our chores tomorrow. We'll do our chores. And then the master comes back and like, oh, hey, you're back. Cool. It's just kind of, it's very simple. It's really not that challenging. And it's like, so there's all these worries and like, oh no, sun, moon, stars, Jesus returning. But for us, it's like, no, just be a good tree, be a good worker. You don't have to worry. There's certainty in all the, there's so much here that's a big question mark. Big question mark. And it's all God stuff. Like, what does this God stuff mean? How are we supposed to interpret this? How do we reckon blah, 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 blah? It's like, we have a hard enough time just putting out figs. like, we're worried about all this when it's like, just, you've got fig tree stuff. So yeah, it's a lot.
I noticed in that last paragraph that like 4 or 5 times he says stay awake or keep awake.
Yeah.
Seems really worried about us falling asleep.
With good reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would. I mean, I could apply that either to what we were just talking about with, like, you know, either the desire to sleep in and then get up at the last minute, or the wake up, do it, and then take a nap. It's kind of that whatever. You could push it immediately and just say, like, you know, says stay awake, stay awake, stay awake, and then what is this? A day or two later, they're in the garden. And he's like, stay awake, and they can't stay awake. Like, it comes back. Can't you guys stay awake for like 5 minutes? And they're like, oh, yeah, we got this. And so, I mean, even, and that's really just, yeah, and when you look at that, it's like, well, what's the point of them falling asleep? Like, what's the narrative or what's the impact of them repeatedly falling asleep? And they're like, well, that's us. We're, you know, it's like, we're with Jesus every Sunday. Right on. Okay, yeah. And then
Oh, I
Monday
always
hits.
meant stay spiritually awake.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes
And
and
don't
yes.
slip away, don't,
Well, that too, yeah.
yeah, so, not physically awake.
Well, oh yeah, I mean, but like so the garden, they're falling asleep, but I mean, Jesus is like, stay awake, not because it's good for you to be physically awake, but like, there are spiritual things happening. Like, I am drinking from this cup that I'm asking the Father to pass. Satan is leading a group of people to arrest and, you know, so salvation stuff is happening all around you. Stay awake and alert. And they're like, sure. And they don't. But even though they fall asleep, you know, they're still disciples. They're still Jesus still dies for them. He still calls them his own. So I mean, there's so many good messages coming out of that where, yeah, they fall asleep, but they're forgiven. Peter denies 3 times, but he's forgiven. You know, we fall asleep all the time. We're focused on all this stuff. Well, especially pastors, theologians, whatever, you know, worry a lot about this stuff, which, you know, we should, but oftentimes it's to the detriment of this stuff. You know, there's a good balance to strike here where it's like, be aware, be concerned about spiritual things, absolutely, but don't lose sight of the figs and the people. Don't lose sight, well, figs in the house. I won't use that example because, yeah, no. I don't have permission to use that example. But I mean, seriously, it's like, you know, there are people, there are things to tend to. You know, we can't just be all noses in scripture all the time saying like, well, if I just spend all my time studying the word, then I will know how to deal with everything in this life. It's like, well, yeah, but it's more, it's being in the word is not just reading the word constantly 24/7. It's reading the word, yes, but it's also seeing how the Spirit then applies that word in real life. Like, hey, you know, if my kid came to me crying and like, oh, I'm struggling with it, like, shut up, I'm reading the Bible. Like, what do I do? What is the God-pleasing thing? It's like, well, I'm reading scripture. I'm in his word. And meanwhile, my child is, oh, I just want, like, well, child. And then get rid of it. No. So there's always.
Turkey hats are cool.
What?
That's why turkey hats are cool.
Yeah, it keeps them from coming to me because they're like, I don't want to take this to the dad. He's an idiot. I'm going to go to mom.
It increases your credibility.
Oh, I'm sure it does. It increases something. I'm not sure if it's my credibility.
When your kids have you committed, it'll just be one more picture to use.
Oh, well, we tell them that all the time. With whatever, it's like, well, just know that this will, you know, this will come up in therapy. We're just, you know, we're looking out, we're giving you something to talk about, you know.
So how many do all the gospels have the end times, or is Mark's specialty?
No, they all.
They all
They all
Yes.
talk about it, all right. That shows where I need to go. The one that always got me is women who are in labor, beware. And every time I had a baby, I thought, oh my gosh, not now.
Well, and that's one of those scenarios where, I mean, when he's talking about that and kind of like pray that this doesn't happen in the wintertime, he's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. He's talking about 70 AD. I mean, he's like, in this whole discourse that this is a part of, he's talking about the cross, he's talking about 70 AD, and he's talking about the last day. It's like it all just like blends together, and it leaves the disciples all sorts of confused, and doesn't really do much for us either, because we're like, well, we get that, but we don't have to worry about that. Cool. So we turn all of our attention to this. So yeah, it's just the women in labor, the fleeing to the hills. That was all destruction of Jerusalem stuff. Which, I mean, for them, it would be like, for the Jews that he was talking to, I mean, that was the end of the world. The temple destroyed, the Jerusalem destroyed. It was like, yeah, that was the end. What could be worse than that? Well, the end. But good, and don't worry. Meanwhile, I'm giving you all the stuff to worry
Word will
about.
always be there.
Say what?
I said, don't worry, his word will always be there.
Well,
You
and that's
know
the other thing
that's-
is my word will not pass away.
That's the end result. It will not.
Which, and this is the point that I make in the sermon, is you have verse 30 and 31, where we spend good 10 minutes talking. True, what does this generation mean? Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. What the heck does that mean? This generation until this all takes place. Which generation, which time, these things, whatever. But then what does he say? My words will not pass away. What's the more important thing for us to
That's
get?
what you can count on.
Yes! It's like let's freak out over the thing that we can't really understand, and we can make our best guess, but even then it's going to be like, well, this is what we think. Or the solid words, my words will not pass away, no ambiguity, this is exactly, will not happen. Okay, but will not happen. But will not happen.
Everything through the Bible says, do not fear.
Right.
His words will not pass away.
Yeah.
That's all I have to know.
When the storm hits the boat and they're sinking, oh, don't you care that we're perishing here?
I know.
And he's like, don't be afraid. Well, it's like, first of all, well, of course they're afraid. They might drown. But it's like, the point is like, well, what's going to happen? Are we going to live or are we going to die? And Jesus is like, yes.
Right.
Like, why do you care? You're with me. And if I'm telling you don't be afraid, then don't be afraid. You know, this is like kids. It's so good to have kids and being a Christian, because you get a lot of sympathy for God. And like, oh my gosh, Lord, I now understand what it feels like to deal with me, because I've got little me's that I deal with, and it's like, just trust me. I'm your parent. Don't stop asking questions. Just trust me. This is going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Yeah, but no, inconsolable.
It never ends, does it?
Oh, no, God, no. It's going to be fine. Yeah, I think like Caitlin right now, the college, what am I going to do and where am I going to go? I'm like, it's going to be fine. Oh, it's not going to be fine. And I'm just thinking back to, when Heather has got her pinned down on her lap, trying to pull the first loose tooth out, and Caitlin is like, no. She's like, shut, this is going to be real easy if you just stop moving. It's not going to hurt. You're not even going to know, and it's going to be fine. No. And then, oh, that's what we are. That's all we are, is babies crying about losing our teeth. That's probably a little bit too reductive, but in essence, that's what we are. I mean, it's on one hand that's a little patronizing. You know, well, what about like somebody who just got a diagnosis of cancer? It's like, oh, is that just pulling a tooth? It's like on one hand, no, of course not. That's a bigger deal. But honestly, in a theological sense, what are you afraid of? What, that you're going to die? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that means your soul goes to heaven and waits, and Jesus has given you the promise that your body will be raised imperishable. You're going to miss out on a few seasons of your favorite TV show? I mean, again, that's probably not the best. I wouldn't necessarily say that in
Yeah,
a...
but we already saw how people react. We had COVID.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, that was the perfect example. People really bunkered in and
Right.
created lots of strength. I mean, some did and some didn't. I'm not saying it wasn't a real disease.
Let's not go there.
All I'm saying is that's
Not like I
not
talk
even,
about elections.
but that's not even as concrete as cancer. It was
Right.
more the thought of getting it
Oh, yeah.
created a
Yeah.
lot of tensions for people.
It caused a lot of fear.
It did.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And for what?
But some good came out of it. Now we broadcast our service
Well,
all the time. I mean, we.
yeah, I mean, I tell people...
Yeah, we're half a step away from an AI pastor
That-
up front delivering
Oh,
a
you're
sermon.
more than that. You're more... You don't think that I'm not...
They
You know,
wouldn't buy a turkey hat.
these are all sermons by ChatGPT. I mean, come on. No, in a very practical sense, like COVID, we benefited from COVID in a way, because all of our young couples stayed home and had babies. But seriously, we had a lot of young families with one baby. COVID doubled that at least, and the problem we had before COVID was you just didn't see kids. And if a family comes with kids and you don't see kids, you're not going to go back to that church because there's no kids. And that was our issue. And it's like, well, and you saw right at the get-go, you saw, well, my 3 and Lizzie and maybe Baby Trip, Baby Hope.
Oh, yeah.
Baby Trip, Baby Hope, my 3 and Lizzie. That was our youth. Well, COVID hits, and then a year after COVID, all of a sudden we have our children's message, and we've got a gaggle of children. So now the young couple, families who are coming, they're like, "Oh, you have kids, and you have them up front. They're visible. Like they're not like they don't have their own children's church. They're like here. I want to stay. I want to. Yeah, this is a good place to raise my kids. So COVID actually, we did have a silver lining there in that we got a lot of kids in there. So it actually was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, and there's a lot of jobs that are out of their homes now
Mhm.
where they can be with their kids
Yeah.
and still work.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of things.
But we freaked out anyway. So
God takes these bad things and makes them good.
right, and it's not to say that there wasn't fear worth being afraid of. I mean, there were people dying. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been listening. I don't know why I've been doing this. I've been listening to like news items and little commentary broadcasts from like 5 years ago, like really old news, because I don't want to listen to current news. That's too depressing. And it's actually nice because all the old news is saying the exact same stuff you're hearing today anyway. So like, nothing changes. Good to know. And just it is kind of a nice, well, not a nice. It's a sobering reminder of like, you know what? Yeah, it was scary because there were a lot of, hundreds of thousands of people dying. I think commonly we'll look back now and be like, today people are like, yeah, some people died during COVID, but we overreacted, we went too far, and it's like, there was a lot of death. And I think we forget, and there were a lot of people who were dying alone, where
That
their
was the bad
families
thing.
could not be near them. That was traumatic. So not only did we have the fear of people dying, but people dying had the fear of not being surrounded by their loved ones, and their loved ones having the fear of not having to be there with them.
Connection. So
So it was bad. We didn't handle it well at all. But the core of it is like, don't be afraid. And it's not just don't be afraid, do whatever you want. But it's like, don't be afraid that even what you do, what you do is what you do. It's either going to be fine or it's not going to be fine. It's gonna help or it's gonna hurt.
You don't know.
You don't know.
That's right.
So, grow some figs. Oh, well, now we have the title for my
Alright.
sermon. There we go.
Grow some weeds.
Grow.
Grow some
I
figs.
said throw some fits.
Well, that can be taken around.
Yeah.
Exactly. Darn it, people, grow some figs. Oh, yes. There it is.
We will expect President Davis's call
Oh.
later.
Just tough growing
Are you
things
kidding?
here.
That's for the highlight reel right there.